like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
All right, so we're going to dive into some pretty interesting stuff today.
Yeah.
Caitlin Clark,
Yeah.
Times Athlete of the Year, making some waves in the WNBA. She just helped the league secure a huge win chartered flights.
Right.
You would think everyone would be celebrating, but it sparked some serious debate. And we're going to unpack all of this, starting with an article from Sports Illustrated. Stephen A. Smith forcefully defends Caitlin Clark amid resentment of her WNBA assist.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting here is this situation kind of brings to light the complexities of, progress in a league that's been fighting for equality, for years and years.
Right.
Clark's arrival kind of coincides with this major shift, and it's raising these questions about, who gets the credit and how we view allyship.
Yeah, it's really like the perfect storm.
Yeah.
You have this young, incredibly talented player stepping on the scene at the exact moment the WNBA finally secures something players have been advocating for decades, chartered flights.
And that timing is really key, I think, because it creates this perception, whether it's intentional or not, that Clark was the catalyst for this change. But as you know, someone who's been following the league,
Right.
this has been a long time coming.
Right. It's like those years of struggle, the countless voices demanding better treatment suddenly get overshadowed by the arrival of the superstar.
Exactly. And that's where Stephen A. Smith comes in, fiercely defending Clark amidst all this controversy.
Yeah.
His main argument, people need to chill out and direct their anger at the system, not at Clark, who he believes is genuinely trying to help.
So he's basically saying, don't hate the player, hate the game.
Right, exactly.
But is it that simple?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Smith uses this rising tide lifts all boats analogy to describe Clark's impact.
Okay.
He's suggesting that her success will benefit all WNBA players regardless of race or background.
Okay. That's a powerful image. But let's be real. The WNBA has a long and complicated history with racial dynamics.
For sure.
I mean, some might say that this analogy oversimplifies things.
Absolutely. And this is where it gets really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Does individual success truly translate to systemic change?
Right.
Does it address the deeper issues of racial and gender inequity that have plagued the WNBA for years?
Right. We're not saying Clark single-handedly brought in chartered flights.
Mm-hmm.
But the timing of her arrival, coupled with her outspokenness on the topic, has definitely amplified the conversation.
Oh, absolutely. It's brought to light not just the inequalities within the WNBA, but also this broader question of how we attribute credit, how we navigate allyship, and what true progress really looks like. And it all really stems from a few comments that Clark made in a Time interview.
Yeah, let's get into the SI article quotes her saying, and I quote, "I know with the platform I have, it's my responsibility to try to elevate Black women."
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the surface, this seems like a positive statement.
It does.
But it sparked debate about whether she, as a white athlete, is the right person to lead this charge.
Right.
Some argue it comes across as saviorism, while others see it as genuine allyship.
Yeah.
That term, saviorism, it's loaded.
Well,
Can you break that down for our listener?
yeah, so saviorism in this context refers to the idea of a privileged individual swooping in to save a marginalized group without truly understanding the complexities of their experiences or acknowledging the systems that have created those disadvantages.
So some are questioning whether Clark, despite her good intentions, is falling into that trap.
Precisely, they argue that true allyship requires more than just words.
Right.
It requires action understanding and a willingness to step back and let those most affected lead the way.
So we've got this tension brewing.
Yeah.
On one hand, you have people praising Clark for using her platform to advocate for change. On the other, you have those who are wary of her intentions and the potential for her actions to overshadow the voices of Black women in the league.
Exactly, and that's where we really need to dig deeper.
Right.
Is there a way to be an effective ally without falling into that savior complex?
Right.
Can individual success genuinely contribute to dismantling these systemic inequalities?
And what about Smith's defense? Is he right to say that we should be celebrating individuals like Clark who are trying to help, or is that letting her and the system as a whole off the hook too easily?
These are the tough questions we need to grapple with, and to do that, let's take a closer look at Smith's argument and break down this rising tide lifts all boats analogy.
Let's do it, because the WNBA has always been about more than just basketball. It's about social justice, it's about representation, and it's about challenging the status quo.
And this situation, with all of its complexities and contradictions, is a microcosm of those larger struggles.
So for our listeners, someone who's clearly invested in this league and its future, We're about to explore whether this is a turning point, a step forward, or maybe even a step back.
And whether Caitlin Clark, with all of her talent and good intentions, is a part of the problem or part of the solution. This rising tide idea, it's been used to justify a lot of things,
Yeah.
The idea that if we just focus on individual success, everyone will eventually benefit.
It sounds good in theory, but does it really hold up in the real world, especially in a league like the WNBA where these systemic issues have been so deeply ingrained for so long?
Yeah, that's what we need to examine. And I think let's look at it from your perspective as someone who's followed the WNBA so closely.
Right.
Does one person, even someone as influential as Time's Athlete of the Year, really have the power to shift the entire system?
Honestly, I'm skeptical. It feels like focusing on Clark's individual success, while important, might distract from the collective effort that's been pushing for change for years.
Right, and I think that's a valid point, and it touches on this crucial aspect of allyship,
Mm-hmm.
recognizing and amplifying the voices of those who have been historically marginalized.
Yeah.
It's not about replacing those voices with your own, but about using your platform to support and elevate them.
So how do we strike that balance? How do we use our privilege, whether it's because of our race, gender, or socioeconomic status, to advocate for change without overshadowing or silencing those who've been fighting for it much longer?
It's a constant learning process. Yeah. And it requires humility. It starts with truly listening to the experiences and perspectives of those who are different from us.
Right.
It means acknowledging our own biases and being willing to step back and let others lead.
And sometimes it means accepting that our role is not to be the hero, but to be the support system,
Exactly.
to amplify the voices of those who need to be heard, to use our resources to create opportunities, and to challenge systems of oppression wherever we see them.
Exactly. Allyship is not about accolades or recognition.
Right.
It's about working in solidarity with marginalized communities to dismantle systems of injustice and create a more equitable world.
So coming back to Clark and Smith's defense, it's not about dismissing her efforts or saying that she shouldn't use her platform to advocate for change. It's about recognizing the nuances of allyship and understanding the potential pitfalls of saviorism.
For sure. And it's about holding both individuals and systems accountable. We can celebrate Clark's success and appreciate her efforts to use her platform for good, while also demanding more from the WNBA, from sponsors, and from society as a whole.
Right, because at the end of the day, chartered flights are just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
There's still a huge gap in pay, in media coverage, in fan support between the WNBA and the NBA, and those disparities are directly tied to the systemic devaluation of women's sports, particularly women of color.
Yeah, and that's where I think Smith's argument, while well-intentioned, might fall a little bit short.
Yeah.
Focusing solely on individual responsibility, even if it's Clark trying to be an ally, can inadvertently distract from the larger systemic issues at play.
It's like that saying, you can't fix a flat tire with a Band-Aid.
Right.
Yes, we need individuals to step up and be allies, but we also need to address the root causes of inequality. We need to challenge the systems that have created these disparities in the first place.
And that requires a collective effort. It requires fans, players, coaches, media sponsors, everyone working together to demand better, to push for real change, to create a future where women's sports are valued and respected on par with men's.
So what can we as individuals who care about the WNBA and the future of women's sports do to be part of that solution? What concrete steps can we take to move beyond just talking about these issues and actually create meaningful change?
I think it starts with awareness. Educate yourself about the history of the WNBA, the challenges the players face, the disparities that exist.
Okay.
Read articles, listen to podcasts like this one, follow players and advocates on social media.
Okay, awareness is key, but then what do we do with that knowledge?
We turn it into action. Support the league financially by attending games, buying merchandise, subscribing to streaming services.
Right.
Advocate for more media coverage, demand better sponsorships, call out sexism and racism wherever you see it, whether it's in the comment section online or in casual conversations with friends.
So it's about putting our money where our mouth is showing up for the league in tangible ways and using our voices to amplify the message of equality and justice.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that allyship is not a one-time thing. It's a lifelong commitment to challenging our own biases, learning from others, and using our privilege to create a more just and equitable world.
So it's circling back to Caitlin Clark. Even if we have mixed feelings about her approach or the timing of her statements, we can't deny that she's sparked a vital conversation.
Absolutely, and that's what makes the situation so fascinating. It's not a simple black and white issue.
Right.
It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves, about society, and about the complexities of progress.
And Smith, despite perhaps oversimplifying things with the rising tide analogy, does raise a crucial point. How do we balance holding individuals accountable with fostering a culture where people are willing to use their platform to advocate for change, even if they make mistakes along the way?
That's the million-dollar question, and I think the answer lies in embracing the discomfort, in being willing to have these difficult conversations, to challenge ourselves and each other to do better, to be better.
Because ultimately, this isn't just about Caitlin Clark. It's about the future of the WNBA and the larger fight for gender and racial justice in sports and beyond.
And that fight, as you know, requires all of us to show up, to speak out, and to never stop pushing for a more equitable world.
So where does all of this leave us? We've unpacked Caitlin Clark's comments, the complexities of allyship, and the larger fight for equality in the WNBA.
It's clear that this isn't just about basketball. It's about how we navigate social change, how we leverage privilege, and how we create a more just world both on and off the court. And for you, as someone who's clearly, invested in these issues, it presents a real challenge.
Yeah, it's like, where do we go from here? I mean, we've identified the problems, we've dissected the arguments, but what are the solutions?
Well, there's no easy answer.
Right.
But I think one thing is clear: we need to move beyond the blame game. It's easy to get caught up in pointing fingers, arguing about who's right and who's wrong, but that doesn't actually get us anywhere.
Right. It's like that old saying, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So how do we become part of the solution? How do we turn this debate into meaningful action?
I think it starts with individual responsibility.
Okay.
Each of us has a role to play, no matter how small. It could be as simple as educating yourself about the issues, having conversations with friends and family, supporting the WNBA by watching games or buying merchandise.
Right. And don't forget the power of social media. Use your platform to amplify the voices of WNBA players, to call out sexism and racism, to hold those in power accountable.
Right.
Even just sharing an article or retweeting a player can make a difference.
Absolutely. And remember, allyship is an ongoing process.
Right.
It's not about being perfect. It's about constantly learning, unlearning, and striving to be better.
And being willing to have those uncomfortable conversations, even when they're challenging, because real change happens when we push ourselves and each other to think critically and act with intention.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this question. What is one thing you can do today to support the WNBA and the fight for equality?
That's a powerful question. It's not about waiting for someone else to fix the problem. It's about taking ownership and making a difference no matter how small.
Because every action, every voice, every dollar contributes to creating a more equitable future for women's sports and for society as a whole.
And that's what it's all about, right? Using our collective power to create a world where all athletes, regardless of gender or race, are valued, respected, and given the opportunity to thrive. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it sparks some critical thinking, some meaningful conversations, and maybe even some inspired action.
Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing for a better Barding. Tomorrow we'll catch you next time for another deep dive into the world around us.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.